What's up, guys? I'm Jack, and this is Daisy. Daisy, come here. Say hi. Meow. Meow. Do your thing. Come on. Okay, she really doesn't want to meow right now. She just wants to complain. And welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be doing a torch-only Nuzlocke of the base game. So what are the rules of this run? Well, I'm going to go ahead and put them all up on screen right here. If you want to read them, go for it. If not, I will explain what a Nuzlocke is real quick. So essentially, I have access to every torch in the game right now. And if I die while using that torch, I lose it for the rest of the run. And if I lose every torch that I have access to, the run is over and we lost. So that's how I'm defining an Elden Ring Nuzlocke. There are a lot of other rules as well to make this challenge even more difficult than it already is. But again, you can go back and read that if you'd like. If not, let's get started. So with the base torch, I run through Stormvale, destroy Margit, and somehow manage to not get hit by the crossbows that are shooting at us here, which is great. Actually, I believe these are ballistas. Regardless, we are going to make it to Godric, and then I want to farm for the torch pole before we fight Godric, just because it's in Stormvale anyway. And you just go to the Stormvale Cliffside Site of Grace and fight this one dude holding the torch pole and just respawn him. It took me like an hour, and I even very nearly died and lost the Ghost Flame torch before the run even really started. But thankfully I managed to quit out just in time and save the run. And eventually we did get the torch pole, though I forgot to hit record when it dropped. So the torch pole is technically a spear, but I mean, it's also a torch, so we're going to count it. I mean, this is basically the only chance I'm going to get to use a tiki torch as a weapon, so yeah. Anyway, we make it to Godric, and I do want to say a few things about the torches here. So first and foremost, torches do so much poise damage. So for most bosses in the game, it's only going to take 2 charged heavy attacks to get a poise break in the first place, which is just crazy. The only thing about that though is you can't riposte with torches. You can with the torch pole because it's technically a spear, but again, you cannot with regular torches. That being said, they do attack very quickly, so you can get off a bunch of light attacks while they're in their poise break animation. So even without the riposte, you'll still be able to do a lot of damage to them. And as you can imagine, most torches in the game do fire damage, but there are a few other damage types as well. So we have one torch called the Lamenting Visage from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, which does entirely physical damage. There's the Sentry's Torch, which does holy damage instead of fire damage, and then the Ghost Flame Torch, which does magic damage instead of fire damage. Other than that, everything else is pure fire damage and physical damage, which is certainly not a bad spread for the base game. St. Trina's Torch also applies sleep buildup, and the Ghost Flame Torch applies frostbite buildup, so we have some really good options here. We had to Liurnia next, of course, after defeating Godric. It was super easy, barely an inconvenience, as that one YouTuber says. We teleport over to the Academy of Raya Lucaria, hop off the bridge here, and we're gonna go ahead and grab the key to the gate, of course, and we can just sneak behind the slumbering dragon for this. After that, we can go inside the Academy, make our way through it, and then fight the Red Wolf of Radigan. And with the Beast Repellent Torch, we just destroy him. It doesn't do any extra damage to him, but he is weak to fire, so yeah, it wasn't a good time for him. I also lead Moongrim into a trap right here, which was just lovely, and then almost get a one-phase on Rellana with our Lamenter's Visage Torch. And I chose this because it only does physical damage. And there are a couple of other things I want to mention about the torches as well. So first thing, they also don't use a lot of stamina when you're attacking with them, which is so nice. You can spam those light attacks all day long. It's great. That being said, one of the main drawbacks of torches is that they don't really have a lot of range. So hitting moving enemies is sometimes difficult. On top of that, the guard counter animation is a lot longer than most weapons, which gave me a lot of problems, especially when I was fighting Malenia. But you'll hear more about that later. The last thing I want to go over about these weapons is the Ash of War. So there are a couple of torches that are upgraded with smithing stones, and that can have their Ashes of War changed. The only problem with that is that the only Ashavore that they can use is no skill. And you can't change the affinity of it either, even with the no skill Ashavore equipped. So you can't, for instance, make it a heavy torch and make it scale better with strength. And you also can't give it bleed damage. Which, by the way, they really should have made a blood flame torch. I mean, come on. And a black flame torch? Easy money right there. Anyway, with Ronnie destroyed, we can make our way to our next boss. And we're going to head to Altus Plateau next. And we're going to go through the tunnels. I don't feel like getting the Dectus medallions this time around. And with the beast repellent torch, we can thankfully... Oh, I guess it didn't want to work there. Are they technically beasts? It doesn't look like it because they're still attacking us. Well, regardless, I did survive. Defeat Magmamur Makar very easily with the Ghost Flame Torch, and then I went up the elevator to grab a Site of Grace in Altus Plateau, which gives us access to the Festival of Radahn. And in order to get there, I head through the Dragon Burnt Ruins and I test out the Beast Repellent Torch once more on these rats, and it does actually work this time. Normally, these rats will swarm you and just try to eat your face off while you're opening this chest here, but with the torch, they actually don't. That was lovely. Anyway, we got teleported to Caelid, where I ran into my crazy ex-girlfriend, and then we are able to get into the Radahn Festival. Once we get here, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump to the boss fight, and I run around to the back of Radahn here. This is where I always go to avoid arrows and whatnot, and I'm using the Steel Wire Torch for this fight, which is our best damage torch, at least as far as physical and fire damage goes. And every hit chunks him. And this is in like New Game Plus 3 or 4 too. I forgot which one. And I am going to try something out for the next video or two, and please let me know what you think of it. So for some of the boss fights, I might cut it down slightly just to save some time. Most of my videos are over an hour long, and that is A, exhausting to make, but B, not a lot of people watch them all the way through. And since watch time is basically YouTube's most important metric, I figure maybe making these videos a little bit shorter and more interesting and snappy will increase the watch time, therefore getting me more views and longer average watch durations, which will hopefully get YouTube to push this channel more. So theoretically, I can make this an actual full-time job and bring you guys more than one video a week. So long story short, I'm going to be experimenting with like 45-minute videos. And again, please let me know what you think. If it sucks, let me know, and I will not do that. Y'all who have been here since the beginning have priority for sure. Anyway, every hit against Radahn chunks him down a little bit more, and eventually we even managed to get a Poise Break, which will allow us to just destroy him with the Ash of War. Yeah, that did a lot of damage. A surprising amount almost. A couple more hits and he's done for. I think if I had just used light attacks instead of the Ash of War, we would have done more damage, but that's also okay. We're not really in any danger here, and one more use of the Ash of War takes him down. I head back to Altus Plateau next, and we're going to face the Draconic Tree Sentinel. And for this one, I decide to use my Torch Pole. And I chose the Torch Pole because I haven't used it yet, and I want to use it. So we sneak up behind the Draconic Tree Sentinel and get poking. A charged heavy attack followed by a barrage of light attacks will break the Draconic Tree Sentinel's poise here, as well as take him down about 25% of his health already. I go for a guard counter up here, land it, that breaks his poise, and I get a couple of attacks off. Anyway, skip ahead to the end, he's down to one shot. We guard against his lightning attack, survive, and get another guard counter to finish this fight. With that, we can head into Leyndell. Just kidding, I actually haven't been to the Round Table Hold, so the door is locked to us. And instead of going to the Round Table Hold, I decide to go to the Underworld instead. There are quite a few bosses down here that we need to fight, starting with the Regal Ancestor Spirit. So I go ahead and light all these little fires over here, and once I'm done, we can run into the arena, and I bring the torch pole with me. So you'd think that this would be a good weapon against him because of how tall he is, and you know, it's a spear kind of, so it'd be easy to hit him, but it really wasn't. Most of my attacks whiffed, and this guy almost took me down. But thankfully, he is very weak to fire damage, so every attack that we do land does a significant amount of damage. And it was kind of crazy. Maybe I was just mistiming my blocks, but it seemed like most of his attacks would just instantly break my guard. I don't know if I was playing poorly or if he just has really strong attacks, but just thought I'd mention that. So we get him down to about 25% health before he starts to heal back up. And after that, he healed a lot. Like, a lot. This fight ended up being super long because he just uses Giga Drain a lot. So we're just going to go ahead and skip to the end where he is out of PP for Giga Drain and is using Bounce on us. And if you didn't understand that reference, that was a Pokemon reference. I'm sure most of you got that though. And with a few final attacks, we managed to destroy the Regal Ancestor Spirit. And that relatively easy fight takes us into the most stressful fight of the run so far. The Valiant Gargoyle duo kind of sucks, and in this case, I just couldn't dodge like any of their attacks, and wasted basically all of my healing items before the second one even spawned. So yeah, this fight was rough, and I really didn't want to lose my massive amount of runes that I had, so I was trying my hardest to not use the Memory of Grace as a quick escape. And even though I was quickly running out of healing items, I was willing to risk it. One of the unspoken rules of this challenge in particular, since we have already gotten this far, is that I want to keep all of my runes up until the end. So that'll be my goal. Anyway, with one healing flask left, I managed to take out the first gargoyle. The second one was still at full health, but I was in the zone and I managed to dodge most of his attacks before taking him out with 0 healing flasks and barely any health left. That was stressful. We make it to Deep Root Depths and we can just run right through this area, go through the Nameless Eternal City, and head through the Lake of Scarlet Rot in order to get to Estelle, Natural Born of the Void. And I used the Lamenter's Visage for this one as well. And if you look at this torch, it's literally just a head with glowing yellow eyes, which is kind of funny that we're just whacking enemies with a severed head, and very on brand for Elden Ring. And if you're wondering what the Ash of War does, it essentially just makes you more difficult to see. So if you want to play this game stealthily, this is a pretty decent item for that. That being said, Elden Ring is not a stealth game, so I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, Estelle's weak point is, of course, its big skull head, so we're going to go ahead and get as many jump heavy attacks off on it as we can. We're hoping to get a poise break here, but of course, due to the lack of range, hitting his head is actually pretty difficult. But we're going to try our best. And every hit that we do get does a pretty good amount of damage as well. I do get caught in one of his gravity attacks and lose a pretty substantial portion of health, but we survive and heal back up. After hitting its head a few more times, I do get a poise break, which will allow me to do a bunch of heavy attacks, which get off a pretty good amount of damage. Estelle is nearly at half health already, and I imagine pretty close to another poise break. Unfortunately, before I could get that second poise break, Estelle teleports away. So after sprinting back over to Estelle and whacking it a few more times, we do get a second poise break, and get off another flurry of heavy attacks. We still have most of our healing, and Estelle is almost dead. So one final poise break takes us to victory. And with Estelle dead, I decide to finally head to the Round Table Hole. And so far this is a no death run, and we're getting pretty far in it too. With torches of all things. And with the Round Table Hold now available, we can make our way into Leyndell, quickly run through the city, dodging all enemies, and then fight Golden Godfrey, who's a bit of a pushover, and that'll take us to Morgott. And for Morgott, I'm going to also use St. Trina's Torch because we haven't used it too much yet, and hopefully that'll be able to inflict sleep on him. I don't really know if he's weak to sleep or not, but I guess we're going to figure it out. As we spawn in, I heal up real quick because I had gotten hidden by the, Black Knife dude that's outside of the arena. And yeah, that unfortunately costs us 1 and then 2 healing flasks because I failed to dodge his first flurry of attacks. But 2 guard counters will get us a poise break already, and I can just spam light attacks against Morgott from there. And that's already a third of his health down. As far as damage output, St. Trina's Torch definitely isn't the best, but it's also not the worst. Again, the main thing that's special about it is that it does inflict sleep buildup, which can affect some bosses. It's pretty helpful in the DLC, though not so much in the main game. After a long combo, I get the chance to get a guard counter off, which inflicts sleep, and also pushes Morgott into his second phase, so that was really bad timing. It was basically no sleep at all. And after spending about 40 seconds running from his endless combos, we can start damaging him again. We block this attack and get a guard counter off. That breaks his poise, and I decide to go for a charged heavy followed by a flurry of light attacks. And I just noticed that I'm using the word flurry a lot. I spend another 20 seconds running from his attacks before getting another guard counter off and taking him pretty low. And finally, with 2 final light attacks, we finish off this fight. And we're going to go ahead and speedrun our way through the Forbidden Lands and through the mountaintops of the giants to get to the Fire Giant's lair. As far as which weapon we're going to use for this fight, I think the choice is pretty obvious. The Fire Giant does not do well with the snow, so we're going to use the only torch that we have that inflicts frostbite damage, the Ghost Flame Torch, and this is probably the best torch that we have access to in general. Frostbite is just such a powerful status condition, so having any access to that is just great. The other best torch that we have I mentioned earlier is the Steel Wire Torch. And guys, honestly, so far, these things are great. Now, spoilers, I might change my mind on that later, but as for right now, I am having a blast with these. So if you've never given torches a chance, maybe do. They're a lot of fun. Now, this Ghost Flame Torch in particular does not have the best damage against the Fire Giant here. He just has a lot of health, so that's no surprise. But it does manage to get the poise break, and we do get a substantial amount of damage after a lot of attacks. Eventually, I'm able to get under him again and spam a bunch of light attacks, which will hopefully get us into the second phase before he runs around the arena. We also finally get a Frostbite proc off, which takes out a chunk of his health. Not too much, but it's definitely noticeable. And a few more attacks takes us into the second phase. I run up and try to attack his hand that he always puts down in the same exact position every second phase beginning. And again, just due to how little range this torch has, it's kind of hard, but we do manage to get a few attacks off. I dodge his attacks all the while plinking away at his massive health bar, and this is proving to be a very slow fight. But we're making our way. We got this. After a lot of attacks, we do get a poise break, and hopefully I can spam enough light attacks to get a frostbite off here. That would help us tremendously, but I don't manage to do that before he turns up the heat. And after chasing him around the arena for literally 2 minutes straight, we do finally manage to get that frostbite off, which does a lot of damage and takes him down really low. And finally, after he goes for a body slam, we can poke him in his big dumb eye and finish off this fight. And as I was editing this, I was starting to get really hungry, so I suppose it's time for dinner. And today we're gonna make some curry. Woo! So we start by putting about a tablespoon of your preferred oil in a pot and just rubbing it around the edges with a napkin. And then we go ahead and slice up an onion and put that in there, cover it, and have it on medium heat so that it can start to sweat and get soft. After that, we're gonna cut up a potato, as well as a carrot, some garlic, and of course, some ginger. And again, while we're doing this, the onion is cooking on medium heat, so we gotta check on it and make sure that it's not burned. And it's not. It is getting a little bit soft. This is pretty perfect. This is exactly where we want it to be. So with all of our veggies sliced, we can start adding them into the pot as well. I, of course, start with the ginger and the garlic, add the carrots, the potatoes, and also a splash of vegetable broth. We can always add more later on, but I'm just gonna start with just a little bit for now. We're not done yet though, because we gotta add some seasoning. So I start with paprika and just put a non-substantial amount in there. And then, of course, the most important thing, just a bunch of curry powder, like a lot. I also put a pinch of salt in there, but on top of that, we're gonna add chickpeas, tiny can of tomato paste, and some coconut cream. And I wish I had a bigger pot, but it is what it is. And we're gonna go ahead and mix all of that around as best as we can until it is somewhat mixed. And if it's too thick, just add some more veggie broth or water if you really want. So after it's all mixed around, we're gonna put it on medium-low heat. I do add a bit more veggie broth because it is slightly too thick for my taste, but we're gonna leave it on medium-low heat covered for about 2 hours. Now after 2 hours, I'm gonna start to make the rice, and it's 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of water. Put that on medium heat, leave it until the rice has soaked everything up. And we know our curry is done when the potatoes are extremely soft and we're able to break them with our spoon. Now, if you want, you can also add cayenne pepper to this mixture if you want spicy curry. I am personally not a huge spice fan, but it was delicious regardless. So with my belly full and my curry craving satisfied, we can go ahead and head into the Crumbling Farm Azula for our next set of bosses, the Godskin Duo. These fucking guys, man. And after missing 3 sleep pots against the skinny one, I tried to put him to sleep with St. Trina's torch, which only takes 3 hits to put him to sleep. So I kind of wish I'd just done that in the first place. But eventually they almost destroy me, so rather than risk losing St. Trina's torch, I decided to use my Memory of Grace and lose my millions of runes that I have stashed. It would be the Godskins, wouldn't it? Well, the next attempt goes a lot better, and I decided to use the Ghost Flame Torch for most of it to get those Frostbite procs off. Eventually, we destroy the fat one, which just leaves us with Skinny, who falls very shortly afterwards. Oh, Daisy's coming up to say hi. Hang on. Come here. She is so precious. Well, that was another close fight, and I am very sad that we lost our runes. But we get a blessing and a curse that happens to us. So it didn't save our progress the next day, and we're forced to fight the Godskins once more. So, fortunately, after this fight, I do get to keep all of my millions of runes. Unfortunately, and you can go ahead and argue with me in the comments, but even though I died here, I decided to keep St. Trina's torch because I technically had already beaten them, and I didn't want to lose a weapon to a glitch. I don't think that's fair. But again, let me know if you think I was right or wrong to do that in the comments, because comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. And this takes us right up to our favorite beast, Malekith. And I always lose to him, so let's see how this goes. So once again, I brought the torch pole to this fight because, well, when Malekith attacks, he often likes to back up a bit, so I thought the added range might make this a little bit easier. Also, the torch pole is just a pretty fun weapon, and I wanted to use it more. So, in the first phase, I always go for guard counters and charged heavy attacks to try to get a good poise break, but unfortunately, even though I hit him with a bunch of guard counters and charged heavies, they were just too spaced out for us to actually get that poise break. That's okay though, because we still managed to do a substantial amount of damage to him throughout the beginning of this fight, before we do finally get that poise break and riposte. And that takes us right into phase 2. And phase 1 of this fight is never really the problem. Malekith is really fun in the first phase. The second phase isn't that bad either. It's just the destined death effects that really make this pretty difficult. That damage over time is rough. So all throughout the beginning of the second phase, I spent literal minutes just running away from his attacks and trying to dodge and stay safe before getting a few light attacks off here and there. And he was slowly sapping our health and taking away our healing flasks. He only had about a third of his health left, but we only have, 3 healing flasks left, so neither of us are in a really good spot right now. I also unfortunately get caught up in one of his destined death combos and perish before I can heal. Goodbye, Torch Pole. You've served us well. We go for attempt number 2 with our best option, the Steel Wire Torch. And I really don't want to lose this weapon. I feel like this is probably going to be our only chance against Malenia without the torch pole, so I'm hoping we don't die here. That being said, it is our best option in this fight, so I really just didn't want to risk anything else either. I figured we might as well get this over with and use what we got. The first phase, again, was super easy. We got a lot of poise breaks, especially because torches have higher poise damage than the torch pole, so that made it even easier. And the second phase was going a bit better. I was able to get off a lot more damage a lot quicker, and I did not lose nearly as many healing flasks. And before I finished this fight, I wanted to risk grabbing our runes, just in case we didn't have enough time to before the cutscene and teleport. And I know we can fast travel back here after the fight, but I just didn't want to risk accidentally losing those runes, and it did cost me some healing, unfortunately, but we managed to grab them eventually. And 2 more hits got us the win. So, thankfully, we didn't lose that much against Malekith. Gideon's next, and I wanted to use Denaya's torch against him just to inflict madness buildup, and the Ash of War does pretty good against him. Madness is a great tool against NPC Tarnished. But even with something so powerful, Gideon does manage to heal back up, and we get caught in one of his stupid long combos and instantly die. Goodbye Nanaya's torch. I guess we lost all of our momentum when we lost to the Godskin duos that second time, so yeah, that's rough. In the next attempt, we risk St. Trina's torch to this fight, and even though we got really close, we didn't die. We managed to get the win, and thankfully we can move on from this big dumb meanie head. That takes us to Golden Godfrey. Wait, no, that takes us to regular Godfrey. And for this fight, I decided to bring in the base torch, because we haven't used it that much. And the start of this fight was going really well. I was getting guard counters off of like all of his attacks, and even though I lost like half of my health, you know, I got a poise break right off the rip. It's pretty good. And we weren't doing a lot of damage with this torch. The steel wire torch would have been a lot better. But it wasn't bad damage. This fight's going pretty quickly so far. Before long, he charges into phase 1.5, and we are able to get off a lot of attacks. We get a poise break too, and after a few light attacks, we can go into phase 2. Phase 2 starts with us casually dodging his grab attack, and getting a poise break with our first attack against him. And this allows us to do a pretty substantial amount of damage. We dodge his big eruption attack, thankfully taking no damage from it, and then he goes for another grab attack, which we also managed to dodge pretty easily, and that allows us to get some jump attacks off, and we're just fishing for another poise break here. And I go for some guard counters. Unfortunately, the second big AoE attack breaks my guard, but then a light attack breaks his poise, and we take him down into the red. Once again, he tries to pound us into the ground, but we very easily dodge it, and with that, we can finish this fight. Radigan and Elden Beast are next, and with the steel wire torch, we should not have any problems with Radigan. He's actually weak to fire damage. On top of that, poise breaking him is one of the easiest ways to win this fight. That being said, I wasn't exactly playing too well at the start of this fight against Radigan. But that's okay, we have a lot of healing, and in fact we don't have any FP flasks with us because we're not really using any magic or Ashes of War. And every guard counter that we get against Radigan just does so much damage. It's pretty crazy. After a couple of big slam attacks, we do manage to get that poise break finally, which will allow us to take him down into about half health. Radigan does kind of have two phases, but they're not very different from each other, so the second half of this fight will be just as easy as the first. He does cause us to use up a bunch of our healing. We only have 8 flasks left out of 14, but that's alright. After a few guard counters and charged heavy attacks, we can get a poise break and finish off phase 1 of this final boss fight. The Elden Beast is next, and this is where I swap over to our Lamenter's Visage, and that's because the Elden Beast heavily resists any type of elemental damage, and the Lamenter's Visage does pure physical damage. And I go for a lot of charged heavy attacks against him in hopes of getting, you guessed it, a poise break. I talk about poise breaks a lot in this game and throughout my challenge runs, so I'm sorry if that gets annoying. It's just such a substantial part of how I play this game and fight the bosses, which is pretty crazy considering when I first started playing, I was entirely a mage build and did not use melee weapons whatsoever, except for the Moonveil and Sword of the Night and Flame, but I more so use them for their Ashes of War. Anyway, we do finally get that poise break, and due to his extended poise break animation, we are able to take down about a third of his health. And this is a good time to beg for you to subscribe. If I already did this in this video, I'm sorry. I recorded like half of it yesterday and the other half today, so apologies. But if you want to subscribe, that would be awesome, but only if you actually enjoy this content. I don't want you to subscribe to me just because, I don't know, you think Daisy's cute, which she is. She's adorable. But again, I only want you to subscribe if you actually enjoy my content. But if you don't, that's totally fine. And I appreciate you for watching. If you've made it this far, that is also awesome. So just thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the video. Of course, the next part of this is just fishing for another poise break, which we do eventually get, allowing us to once more deal just a bunch of damage to the Elden Beast. And then for the next 2 minutes we run around trying to chase the Elden Beast around the arena and getting off damage when we can, eventually taking us into one final poise break, which will hopefully let us finish off this fight. Okay, well, we got pretty close. 1 or 2 more attacks should do it. Okay, maybe 4 hits, but our fight is far from over because we have Malenia, Moog, Placidusax, and I think Fortisax? I think that's it. And thankfully we still have most of our torches. So I grab the Ghost Flame Torch and start to run down to Placidusax's arena. And this is of course going to be our best option because of the added frostbite damage. And before the fight started, I made sure to put on basically every talisman that I had that could help me resist fire damage just a bit more, because I quite often lose to his big laser beam attack in his 3rd phase. Or 2nd phase? I don't know. And like with many other dragons within the Soulsborne series, the best way to defeat Dragon Lord Placidusax is to stick to the crotch. So we run up right next to him and try to dodge lightning whenever we can, and basically we're just going to spam our light attacks whenever we get a chance to try to get that frostbite off, or hopefully even a poise break, but he does have a significant amount of health regardless, so this fight's going to take a while. So right here, I probably should have just stayed right next to him and tanked through this attack so that I could get off a bunch of extra hits against him, but it is what it is because after that, we get off a couple of attacks, which takes him into a poise break, and we can still get off that substantial damage against him. Unfortunately, with the torch pole gone, we are left with no way to riposte enemies, so we're just going to have to do light attacks during our future poise breaks. We finally get the frostbite off, and Placidusax is already down about a 1/3 of his health. We get whipped with his tail, but we're doing mostly fine. We can heal back up to almost full. He enters his 2nd phase and starts to teleport around us, and we're able to slowly start to chip away at his armor. And our light attack spam continues as he tries to breathe fire on us, hitting us, but not dealing much damage since we have so much fire resist currently, and we're able to take him down to about half health. He then teleports away and splashes us from behind with some lightning claws as we're healing. It doesn't deal too much damage, and we're able to get back up and dodge his next attack. Another lightning nuke will leave him vulnerable for a few seconds afterwards, so that's when we can run up and try to go for some jump attacks in order to get a poise break, which we do once again get, and we can start spamming those light attacks against him once more. He teleports away after this and begins his bombing runs once more, but we're able to dodge most of his attacks and we're pretty okay. So we hit him with a few light attacks in the meantime, and we can get behind him to once again deal damage and finally get our 2nd frostbite proc. He should be entering phase 3 any moment here, and this is where it gets dangerous for me because again, I just suck at dodging his giant laser attack. Thankfully we get another poise break, and I'm hoping that we can just finish him off before phase 3 even begins, but he has too much health and we're not able to. We dodge his rapid lightning strikes as he teleports away, and we just gotta watch the skies for his return. And unfortunately, we get struck by some lightning as we see him coming back at us. Thankfully, we manage to dodge, and we run straight at him to try to get under his laser beams. And for once, I actually dodge it perfectly, and this gives us a massive attack opening. That being said, I do get smacked by some random lightning, which forces us to heal before we can begin to attack again. But he's pretty low as is, and probably pretty close to another poise break, so I think this fight should be over any second now. We do get hit by some fire, but we're totally okay, and we can finish this fight. Alright, 3 more to go. Moog, Malenia, and Fortisax. And we still have quite a few torches left. Some good ones for the next couple of bosses as well, so it's not bad. But before we can fight any of these guys, we have some quests to do. So I go to the Albinuric village, find my favorite chest piece, actually. Yeah, the Depraved Perfumer chest piece is my favorite one just because of the cool fur cloak thing. Anyway, we take out this guy because why not? He talks way too much, and we get the secret Hallow Tree medallion. After that, we go ahead and start Vari's questline, almost dying to Magnus the Beast Claw, but we do manage to take him out before we lose. We find some Maiden's Blood for Vari, and he does something to our finger. It seems like the comment section can't fully agree on what exactly happens. So, yeah, he does something, and then we can make our way to Mohg. And I put on my best fire-resistant armor for this fight, of course, and am once again using the Ghost Flame Torch for its Frostbite buildup. The only other torch that would have done anything to him is probably the Lamenter's Visage, due to its nature of doing purely physical damage. If you didn't know, Mohg, the Lord of Blood Flame, resists fire damage. And holy damage, so the Sentry's Torch might not have done too well either. We very quickly get a Poise Break, and we can then spam light attacks, hoping to get a Frostbite off here soon as well. I think this torch should be a really good weapon against him, honestly. Now, even though in my past few challenge runs against Mohg we've won on our first try, he's always been so close to defeating us. So this is never a free fight. His first phase is not really the problem because he doesn't scatter Blood Flame all around the map. So with a couple of Poise Breaks and Frostbites, we can get him down pretty low very quickly. We even managed to keep, like, all of our healing, which is great. But then, his second phase is where the problem starts. As I said earlier, in his second phase, he begins to scatter Blood Flame all around the area, which will slowly build up our blood loss bar. That's a lot of B words. And yeah, as you can imagine, getting blood every couple of seconds will quickly drain all of our healing flasks, and that's never a good thing. He also heals what looks to be about 20% of his health bar during his phase transition, so that kind of sucks too. Most of phase 2 is just us running around trying to dodge his attacks and waiting for an opening, and we very rarely get those. And the openings that we do get, we only are allowed to get about one light attack off in each one, so it's slow going. It's also very quickly draining our healing items because we're left with 7 Crimson Tears flasks already. After losing 3 more of our healing flasks, we can finally get off a Frostbite, which deals a pretty good amount of damage, and then we're forced to use another healing flask. Yeah, we're running out of these real quick, and he's still got a lot of health left. Not looking good for our Ghost Flame Torch. Thankfully, we get a Poise Break, and that will allow us to take him down to about 20% health. We're left with only 1 healing flask as we get another Poise Break, and hopefully we'll be able to finish the job before he gets back up. Unfortunately, we weren't, and we used our last healing flask. He's pretty low though, and we have full health right now, so maybe we can pull out a win. We really only need to hit him with a handful of light attacks before he's dead, so hopefully we can do this before we perish ourselves. And our blood loss bar is getting pretty high right now, so hopefully we don't suffer another bleed either. That would not be good. Oh, so I put up a poll for next week's video, and the answer was pretty clear as to what you guys want to see. And we're going to be doing a Stormveil Castle Nuzlocke, which is going to be really fun. I'm excited for that. And that's just going to be this, but we can only use gear that we get inside Stormveil. And I think for that, I'm going to also extend that rule to Golden Seeds and Sacred Tears, maybe. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. But yeah, we survived Mohg, and we can make it to Commander Nile, and this is where we get our next death. Goodbye, Beast Repellent Torch. It's been real. We try again with St. Trina's Torch, and we lose that as well. The next attempt is with the regular old torch, and though we get Commander Nile down pretty low, we lose that one as well. Great. So with that, we're down to the Steel Wire Torch and the Lamenter's Visage. And since I really want the Steel Wire Torch for Malenia, we attempt this next fight with the Lamenter's Visage, which we lost. Okay, 1 torch left. And we beat Commander Nile with it. Woo! Okay, so that leaves us with 2 bosses, 1 torch. And since we're a lot closer to Malenia, I decide to do her fight first. We head through the Consecrated Snowfield and through the secret Haligtree passage to get to the Haligtree, and Loretta barely manages to tickle us before we can take her down.
What the fuck, dude? I was doing well.
Without wasting any time, we run through the rest of the hallowed tree and get to Malenia. Let's do this.
Oh my god.
Alright, well, we lost. That sucks. But that just means that we're allowed to use the rest of our arsenal to defeat Malenia. I wasn't going to let it end there. So even though we unfortunately lost this Nuzlocke, I take all of our weapons out of retirement, and it's time to defeat Malenia with only a torch. Cue the death montage. Believe it or not, that was only about half of the defeats we suffered against Malenia. And throughout each loss, we learned a little bit more on how to make this fight work. So after our first couple of losses, I took all of those runes, about 7.5 million runes, and put them into levels. So we got more endurance, more dexterity, and more vigor. And for this, I put on my chunkiest armor with the most physical damage resistance, and decided the best course of action would be to use the steel wire torch on top of the torch pole. This was so that I could get poise breaks with the steel wire torch and deal most of the damage with it, and then with the torch pole I could riposte and also do something really fun, which you guys will see in a minute. Yeah, the torch pole's Ash of War is pretty fun for Malenia. Anyway, yeah, Malenia in New Game Plus 3 is kinda difficult, as you can imagine, and it gets even more difficult with every new game after that. Now, unfortunately, with all of this heavy armor and with 2 weapons in hand, we have the medium roll. But that's totally okay, we can make it work, as long as we're not bat rolling. Also, if those of you who are still watching, if you could do me a huge favor, and just let me know in the comments, do you prefer me to commentate over the fights like Malenia and Radahn, or do you want to just see them as they are the entire fight without my constant chattering? Please let me know in the comments. For this one, I'll do half and half. Anyway, one of the things that I learned while fighting Malenia with the steel wire torch is that it only takes 2 guard counters for us to get a poise break against her, which is really not that many. Furthermore, after she's getting back up from her riposte animation, we can occasionally use the torch pole's Ash of War to toss her right back on the ground, and it's really funny. It doesn't do that much damage, I just think it's fun. Lastly, I did notice a problem with the steel wire torch, and that's its guard counter animation. It just takes slightly too long to dodge some of Malenia's attacks. So yeah, the torch pole is a lot quicker, and I did attempt to fight her with just the torch pole multiple times, and it was so much easier that it wasn't even fair. And I decided that it wasn't really in the spirit of this run to beat her with the torch pole rather than the torch. So I decided to only use the torch pole for ripostes. I also think that swapping between the 2 weapons made this fight a bit more interesting. But anyway, that is enough of my constant chattering. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll catch up with you at the end of this fight. I would definitely recommend watching it through because at the end it gets really close. So again, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, I'm back, and we're almost done with the second phase. Good God, please move, move, move. Oh my God, that is so stressful. Whew. So we barely managed to survive a waterfowl dance and then dodge her next Scarlet Aeonia, healing back up to full, but using our last healing flask in the meantime. So we're out of healing, and Malenia still has a pretty substantial amount of health. Furthermore, our deflecting guard tier has run out, so we can no longer do any guard counters. Well, technically we can, we're just going to take a lot of damage in the process, so we're not going to do that. So the strategy from here on out is to go for jump attacks whenever we can in order to fish for a poise break. After that, a riposte should take her pretty low. And we get it, and the riposte does take her pretty low. So I spam some light attacks with the torch, and we finally get the win. I'm not even kidding, this fight took me so many hours. But we're done. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you like this sort of content, go ahead and subscribe. If not, your viewership is always enough for me. Peace.